Supportables, it's about that time. Week 13 is done. We're getting on to week 14. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves, but this was a pretty epic week. Scores were way up and way down, weirdly enough at the same time. And a lot of dreams were actually broken. We had a bunch of teams clinch, and we had a couple teams with their season effectively, you're down to a spoiler. Let's get right ahead with it, though, because there's way too much to talk about. I don't want to waste time introduction. Let's go to the NFL news. Last week, I did not use the Thanksgiving gimmick pretty much so I could this week. So what am I thankful for? I mean, number one, no stash. You also might be thankful of that. Or if you miss it, travel back in time, watch last week's video and remember what was. But I'm also just thankful that at this point in the NFL season, things start to kind of iron out the way they normally do. The Ravens, who were dominant, are now starting to show that maybe they're not, just to prelude the flop they're probably going to have in the playoffs if the Ravens are going to Raven. Snow games are amazing. We had one last week and we got one again in this particular week. The Bills, building on that one, usually now is the time because they're an awesome cold weather team with awesome cold weather fans. If you need any evidence, do you see how much snow those fans were sitting on late at night? They had already got the game wrapped up, and most of them just stayed to grind it out. Awesome fan base. Also, maybe made you some money. If you bet on the underdog on this one, we did have a celebrity and an NFL famous person get engaged, but maybe not the one people had originally bet on. So congratulations to all those Steinfeld and Allen ships there. So congratulations. But also, this is the kind of year the time of year that we also start to see some of the pros and maybe some of the cons. Cons are more fun to poke at and try and take a look at. So if you're looking for poor coaching decisions, I mean, you've got Chicago, who I'm not even making fun of because they must be next year the team of destiny. Everything is going wrong for them this year, from like the Hail Mary, mismanagement. That game looked like when you gave someone a Madden controller and they would hit instead of juke or speed burst, they would hit slide. And at the end of the game, they didn't know how to rush to the front and spike the ball or call a quick play. So they just kind of wound the clock out. Las Vegas, some say mismanagement. Some are really bent on this Kansas City potentially Taylor Swift buying out the NFL conspiracy theory, but weirdly enough, not the craziest conspiracy theory going around on the internet right now. But all of these kind of make you think this is the way it typically is around the end of the season. So I'm thankful for that. I'm also thankful for my health and hopefully everybody else's health. And if you have a favorite team, be thankful if they're healthy. Last year, we saw the Chiefs and the 49ers play off in a pretty decent Super Bowl. You could make the argument that the 49ers were the best team, maybe, but they were certainly the healthiest. This year, flip the script, completely opposite. I mean, speaking of that snowball, you don't have a Shanahan unless you expect them to Shanahan, but to run a guy with a real questionable leg situation into the ground in CMC, this is pretty crazy, and we can't really trust. I mean, okay, there's a bit of a calf gate going on right now. People saying they saw the snap and the pop, and he did have a bad Achilles or two bad Achilleses, and they're saying knee, but can we trust the 49ers at all anymore? I mean, fantasy owners of CMC, no, he lied at the beginning of the year. They hid the injury, and that's a big deal. But also this year, they're kind of getting the comeuppance. They have so many players. I mean, Williams in their tackle, Ayuk obviously be gone for the season. They've gone through, right now they're going to have 3 running backs this week on the injured list. Bosa's trying to make his oblique great again, so he's not back yet. Realistically, they've lost their essence, and you would think most people are just going to take a knee, but that's not going to be Shanahan. So if you are healthy, feel good about your health, especially if you're worried about the potential of Medicare, because it looks like Rodgers is on his way out sooner than later. So maybe he joins the cabinet and starts making sure that everyone's healthcare needs are met. I think the last thing I'm obviously thankful for, aside from the fact that I'm trying to wrap this up a little bit early, anyone who's made it this long into the video so far and still paying attention, thank you so much. And as a reward, let's talk a little bit more about our specific fantasy leagues. An epic matchup worthy of the rankings. This was our number 1 overall scoring team in Hale and Vincent and Fourth and Conquer, and our number 3 scoring team. Sorry, Randy, I feel like this has happened to you a couple times over the year, although we can't complain too much with your luck, being as you're in the top 4, but you actually probably could have been even higher. You bumped into one of the two other teams you couldn't play. This one was pretty epic. Obviously, not too many people underperforming. You can see CD Lamb, obviously, though, breaking that trend. You did have a bunch here, Fourth and Conquer. You had some running back help. You had number 1 and number 4, and not the guy that's been helping you out in Henry. Bucky Irving came out, and even though he had to be removed at the end, and then Cook and the Snowball did just fine. Your kicker was also the kicker 2, but our kicker 1, because the kicker 2 was not claimed. It was Arizona's kicker. And overall just had, I missed McLovin. He was the wide receiver too. So you were all over the map, all over the scoring board. Randy, you too. You had the quarterback 4 in Daniels. He came back with another good one for you. The tight end pickup of Jonas Smith has been massive. He was the tight end 3, and Bijan was the running back 2. So it's not like you weren't putting up some scores here, but ultimately you just needed a bit more love. If we take a look down, actually, it could have been slightly different as well. We had some points left on the bench, most notably Jerry Judy's 42. He was the wide receiver 1, and Wilson actually was the quarterback 2, but the quarterback 1 that anyone had, Winston, weirdly enough, even though he couldn't stop throwing interceptions, also couldn't stop throwing touchdowns. So that was how that particular game on the Monday night worked out. So this is fairly cemented. Both of you are in the playoffs, and you know it. So now you're just jockeying for position. So is this going to be a matchup that we see sooner than later, or is this one that we're saving for well into the finals or semis? I guess only time will tell. I was actually the third or fourth, as we went through it, third winner, 4th overall scoring team, but the second overall played our worst team, so I leave them to the end just for a wah-wah. And for this one, I appreciate it, Malakovs. I asked for a nice friendly matchup where maybe you didn't put your best out there. Now, you still kept Jackson in, and he was a quarterback 5, and Mixon did quite well, also running back 5. But I'll notice you kept it down in the order. You certainly told Kittle to take it easy in Buffalo. You were resting Swift and Connor, hoping for big matchups there. You did have a little bit of love on the bench, so it could have been a lot worse. So this is where I'm saying I appreciate it. Your defense in Buffalo would have been an upgrade. Goff probably would have helped you out. Myers and Adams at wide receiver. Certainly there's some things that could have improved. But I did my best too. I mean, I actually had the defense 1 and defense 2, and I started the wrong one by a point. That would have ticked me off if I would have lost by less than a point. And Brian Thomas Jr. would have been a good addition for me to put in for any one of my receivers, because apparently my receivers are allergic to catching the ball too much. You know, you got to spread the love out. I needed that win. It helped me clinch the playoffs. I'm not saying I'm in a good position, but at least I'm in the dance. So I appreciate that. And you are still our number 1. I don't think you're in too much threat of that, but we will take a look at the standings just to be in case. Raph and James, there's no other way to say it. You kind of got raw-dogged here by the 3-headed monster. Not only is this a loss that I know you don't want to take pride-wise, but also this all but knocks you out of the playoffs. You pretty much need a 250-point performance and have someone tank to actually get through. So this was pretty much it for you. And it was kind of done in a meh way. You didn't really have any outstanding performances. Most people were all right. I mean, Walker obviously massively underperformed, and Chuba Hubbard, who's been a huge steal for you, really hurt you. But, you know, you just kind of had a bunch of mediocre. You needed someone to punch it. You didn't get anyone on a top 5 board. Now, what's crazy here, there, Raw Doggers, you barely did as well, only you were on the other side. Instead of not having a lot in the top 5, you did have Seattle's defense, which was the defense 5. But you just kind of had enough in each position. You didn't really have anyone go off, but you didn't really have anyone tank either. And ultimately, that might have been for the best. You made the right decisions for the most part. You didn't have a whole lot of love on your bench, so hopefully that's not something that scars you too late. So, Raph, James, I'm sure you can write some kind of petition about a new way to start a playoff, and maybe everybody makes the playoffs this year, but it's not going to work out for you. There's always next year, but even more fun into Week 14. There's always spoilers and a consolation. For the Raw Doggers, you're pretty much locking yourself into the top 2 here, which is definitely where you want to be heading into the last week. In a very civil matchup, both people refused from trash-talking each other and kept it all above board. Now, Pamela, the downside of this is this did, as you pointed out in the chat, this cost you any playoff spot. There's always consolation. There's always something to dig into, and you certainly can play spoiler next week, potentially. But this just wasn't your week. When you have your number 1 pick go out and just have an epically bad season, riddled with injuries, and then to get hurt in the middle, that's just kind of that's going to crush any kind of ambition you had. You did have a few people, upstanding here, and actually there was a time, I know when I woke up, this looked all but over and all that you had it, and then just tank after tank after tank, especially heading into that night game. You were supposed to win this. Purdy with 2 points has to be an all-time career low. We know McCaffrey gets hurt. And then the kicker doesn't even meet their predicted. It just wasn't meant to be. Jackie, you fought pretty hard here. You did actually have, both of you, some points on the bench that would have made you upset, Jack, had you lost, especially Pittsburgh's D not getting out there for you. That was the defense. Or sorry, they were just outside the top 5 defense. Some good performances, but lucky for you, you had some pretty great ones as well that you did start. So it all worked out for the best, or at least for the most part. I was a little worried for you there. Baker got cleaned, and it looked like he was going to get hurt and not come back. But then he came back because he's Baker Mayfield. Your non-receiver receiver in your flex and Evans, he was the wide receiver 3 in the week. And Andrews, looking like he's coming back from all those offers that he put up at the beginning. Maybe he's healthy now, was the tight end 4 in the week. As we're going to see with the standings, Jackie, you're one of the few people, in fact, the only person who's on the outside looking in who has a puncher's chance. How likely that is, we'll have to wait for the standings, or let's see in the next matchup who you might be actually competing against. Hanging on to the 6th spot with style. Now, it would have been better if there was a little bit of a fight here, but Kelsey, realistically, there's only one team you couldn't have bumped into this week and you would have taken the win. So you really spiked the ball by almost doubling our former champions. Team Kickass, just not your year, and this is the second time you're going to have to buy. There's only 1 week left, so if you are the lowest again, that would be a dead week to finish it off. I'll get to that, and I apologize, I haven't been the greatest at sending messages this year. Maybe the fact that I'm not going to get any of the drinks has hindered me. I know we got some drinks upcoming though, so that's exciting. Anywho, getting onto it, I mean, just in pure kick in the pants fashion, Team Kickass, you had someone in the top 5. In fact, you had the tight end 1, but you didn't start him. He was on your bench. It was just one of those weeks where it wasn't going to work out. Everything was going down the tubes. Now, Kelsey was playing ball because actually Najee here was the running back 3, and they were on your bench, but you did have the quarterback 3 in Allen, kind of putting himself into the potential for an MVP conversation, and your tight end was the tight end 2 in Njoku, so congrats on that one. Everyone else, again, one of those weeks where you're just hitting predicted, just over, just under, but a couple outstanding performances. Caleb Williams just outside of the top 5, but this was one of his best starts of the year, so you gotta love that moving into week 14. As we're gonna see in just a moment, it's a win and you're in. So as I mentioned, our number 1 seed is locked. Jules and Lara, you don't need this one, but you might want to win going in. You're on a bit of a skid here. You've lost 1, but you've lost 2 out of your last 3, I believe. That's not how you want to limp into the playoffs. We do have a number 2 right now, and I did say that this was helping you lock the top 2 spots, but actually if Fourth and Conquer wins and Cerberus you lose because they have the point differential, they would take top 2. Now, there's not the financial benefit of finishing first, but you do get a bye week, so I would say it's quite competitive. And then the real competition here, 5 people clinched, only 1 more can make it. Kelsey owns the destiny. Jackie's on the outside looking in. Jackie does have the point advantage, so Kelsey, if you lost, you would have to outscore Jackie by 30 to actually hang on to it. But Jackie needs the win. There's no other way because she's got to get up for the tie. Kelsey, if you win, you're in. So who we're up against is going to matter more than ever. And while I can't help but try and see how this might pan out, we've got Kelsey playing Jules and Lara. Pride on the line, or is Jules and Lara going to take it easy on them? I wouldn't think so. Too much on the go, but this doesn't mean a whole lot to them except for bragging rights where it means everything to Kelsey. On the flip of that switch, Jackie, this is a massive matchup, and who do you bump into? Ball too well, and Randy could play spoiler. She could end your season. Wouldn't matter what Kelsey did. You do need the win. If you don't win, it's done. Randy, this one doesn't matter as much to you. Worst case scenario for you, I believe if I win and you lose, then we just flip spots, but we would still play each other like we do right now. If I lose, though, and Kelsey wins, I actually could drop down to 3rd, and that would change matchups a bit. Like I said, Cerberus wins, and they're through, so I know they're not going to throw it against me. And Fourth and Conquer, not only do you get to beat Raph and James 1 more time this year if you take it, but it would keep you in running for a top 2 spot, and obviously that is coveted. Down in the basement there, we got our 9 and 10. We haven't forgot about you, but no offense, we're not probably going to pay attention a whole lot to that one, unless that actually is someone that might be the lowest on the year, but even so, that wouldn't be a drink. So no one wants either one of you to be the lowest. We want someone else, someone who hasn't already paid, so we get another week of drinking. So there's for our wrap up. Super exciting week, obviously. So let's get this video done with. Let's go to the outro. There we have it. Now 5 teams know that they're in, 3 know that they're out, 2 know that it's an epic fight into the death here, so lots to pay attention to in week 14. None of the spots except for the top spot are actually spoken for, so we could have a big shaking of the dice and rumbling, or things could stay status quo and it will be as it is. But now it's time, no more talking, on to the last week of the regular season, then we jump to the playoffs. Even more exciting, I think every team that looks like they're going to make the playoffs understand the playoffs this year, so that's a perk. So again, let's hope for the best, and for all of you, best of luck on week 14.